Former Lieutenant Colonel Don Oldest served in the Air Force as a pilot from 1942 to 1972 in World War II, the Korean War, and then the Vietnam War. Through these long periods of time at war, Don Oldest made lifelong friendships, took an important role in transporting atomic bombs, and participated in scandalous missions.
I was born September 20th, 1924, in a little town called Hinton, Iowa. And I am now 90 years old. And I'll be around another 10 years or so. I'm really in perfect health to talk along with me.
Yeah.
Except I can't eat with my right arm. Little things like that. But my dad was in World War I, and he is the one that encouraged me to, as soon as I was 18. My dad wanted me to join the Air Force because he was in the Air Force when he was in service. And he wanted me, I wanted to be in the Navy seaman. Mm-hmm. And they raised so much hell with me. Yeah. They wanted me to be in the Air Force. They wouldn't accept me in the Air Force. I went down to join, and I was too skinny, I was too thin. Mm-hmm. I was about 5'8", and you had to weigh 135 pounds. I only weighed 123 pounds when I went to join up for the Air Force. Mm-hmm. The recruiting guy said, look, he's a nice guy. And he says, go out and get you a dozen bananas and a gallon of water and come back. I flew the plane that everybody else wanted to fly. The P-38 was the supreme airplane.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many because there were only about, let me see, they only built 900. Yeah, you know, now the P-38 had a little advantage because you could fly on one engine.
Yeah.
So if you lost, I went 20 years as a fighter pilot and 10 years as a transport pilot. And when you get into the transports, that's when you start flying all over the world. Because they had a hard time getting transport pilots. So they trained a bunch of us in 4 engines. So a lot of my time would be under 4 engines. Most of it would be single engine out of the 20
And what were you transporting? People or guns or ammunition or?
People mainly.
Like soldiers from one place to another?
Don Oldest gained his principal knowledge on basic training and flying experience at the Santa Ana Air Base after being recruited. Directly from this base, Don was stationed at Attu in Alaska, where he had a big role in deterring the Japanese invasion. His next training base was in Sandia, New Mexico, where he learned about the atomic bomb and trained for the exportation of these explosives. This led him to be sent to Langley Air Base in Virginia, where he got physical bomb flying practice. Sparked by Hitler's invasion of Poland in 1939, World War II, the deadliest war in history, began between Italy, Germany, and Japan against the US, Britain, China, and Russia. Don Oldest played a big role in the Northern Pacific when he was stationed at Attu, Alaska, by helping deter the invasion of the Japanese. In order to do this, the Air Force men were constantly alert and ready to take action on any foreigners. Oldest carried a bomb but never dropped one in this war. The Korean War began in 1950, only 5 years after World War II ended. This war was a fight against forces of international communism itself. It ended with an armistice signed by North Korea, China, and the UN, but not South Korea. Korea is still split up into Communist North Korea and non-Communist South Korea. Don Oldest was stationed in England during the Korean War. The Vietnam War started in 1955 and went to 1975. Communist North Vietnam and Viet Cong were attempting to make the South communist as well. The U.S. intervened to prevent Vietnam from being converted to a communist nation mainly in the 1960s.
U.S. involvement ended in 1973, and in 1975, North Vietnam prevailed and the North and South were reunified as a Socialist Republic of Vietnam. Don Oldest was stationed in Saigon and Da Nang during the U.S. involvement in this war.
1 o'clock in the morning, I was on a night, called a night mission. I had to get so many hours a night in, and I was flying that plane there.
Wow.
And I fell asleep. The plane decided that it would do a little maneuver and did a little spin. And I'll be damned if I didn't get into a death spiral. All right, and you don't come out of it. The plane is actually spiraling. And the maneuver's nothing except you deliberately do them. You do the spins, and you do a spin, and then you go down maybe 10,000 feet where you're spinning, and then when you want out of it, you just pop the stick forward and it stops spinning. And I would go ahead and stop the spin and survive. Well, I was able to stop the spin because there was a car way out in the distance, and his headlights gave me a way to stop my spin because I had a reference point. I had no reference point before, and consequently, I wasn't able to see any reference point out in the desert. So I had the reference point, gave me what I needed, and I'm able to stop the spin and pull out of the dive. And when I pulled out of the dive, I was low enough to hit the top of the cactus. Had gone from 20,000 feet down to nothing, and I was able to stop it, see the plane out or the vehicle out in the distance, and let me stop it.
During the Korean War, Don volunteered as one of the 103 pilots for a secret suicidal mission. They were trained in F-84Gs to carry one of the first atomic bombs. This mission stopped Russia from starting World War III.
There was about 100 of us volunteered to carry the bomb. Not everybody pilots wanted to carry the atomic bomb because the chances of living through us bombing somebody is zero. You volunteer to give up your life is what you did. And the newspapers have never, or the TV stations have never publicized it and given the 100 pilots credit that saved the world. We saved the world and we never had one single word about it in the newspapers. Isn't it strange?
Yeah. Much like many other men in the military, Don Oldest was grateful to find an amazing companion out on the field. This companion was his beautiful black dog, Blackie Louise. Don brought Blackie to almost every base that he was sent to and loved her company.
When Don was in service, he was diagnosed with polio. He was then flown to Miami to get his treatment. While he was there, he met his nurse and future wife.
I married my nurse.
And who had?
She was my nurse when I had polio.
Don and his wife were married for 10 years and had 2 kids.
This painting was given to Don by one of his friends to commemorate an old mission that they took part in. Don told us that this painting really meant a lot to him and that he will cherish it forever. It represents one of Mr. Oldest's most rewarding missions, and he is lucky enough to have it captured.